you are a B2B service-based business owner and you are looking to gain more clients, create more impact and more revenue in your business, tune in to Amplify Your Marketing Message with Christine Campbell Rapin. Every week, we're going to take you through how to build an audience of buyers, mastering your marketing message, and making offers. Welcome back, my friends. You may have heard three-letter acronyms left, right, and center when it comes to the world of B2B marketing. Today, I want to actually step beyond the lingo to really understand why it matters, what do you do with it, and we are talking the world of SEO, GEO, and actually using search effectively in your business. Super excited to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Rocky Pedden. He's going to bring to us his expertise and talking, what the heck is it? Why do we need to know? More importantly, does it matter at all? So welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here and kind of share some of our insights and hopefully help your audience.
I would love that, and I'm sure they will too. So this term GEO is pretty new for many of us, but not new for you. Why was there, first off, a need to change the name, and what the heck is the difference between these two things that we often go, feels a bit Greek to me, what's going on?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of acronyms floating around out there. And even when we're talking about like the difference between SEO and GEO, like GEO itself, like some people call it AIEO, some people call it LLMO. Like there's a lot of acronyms that kind of mean the same thing. We decided to really stick to GEO as the name because Generative Engine Optimization, it really speaks to like the goal of what LLMs are in terms of generating responses and answers. And we just found that like that seemed to be what most of the people in the industry started calling it. Mm-hmm. So that's the one we went with. And yeah, it's just become, obviously over the last, I would say 9 months in particular, but really the last year, it's just become like really important to understand more and more as it continues to eat into traffic and, how people can be successful with their, organic marketing strategy and how that might need to shift a little bit in 2026 and beyond.
I want to talk about this early adopter because you're right. The language is super confusing to us because I said, I've heard it called a lot of things, and I don't think we're all still on one language, but we're talking generative search, which means a user is asking a question and something else is spitting out a response. And often when we live in the world of business, we think the marketplace is the early adopter as a whole. Entrepreneurs are game to be in AI. We're game to have conversations about how do I adjust my marketing investments differently, because of course we're responsible for getting our businesses and our clients' businesses found. But do you think that the world outside of the early adopter is really on board with this? And if so, why have they started to really realize they too can't be left behind?
Yeah, I think so. And I think more or less it kind of stems back to their own personal experience and how they're actually interfacing with these tools. And so, for me personally, like when ChatGPT, for example, first came out, I was like, I don't need that. I'm not going to use it. I'm a Google Power user. I have been for years. That's not going to change. Well, 6 weeks later, and I have all these custom GPTs. It's helping me augment how I do my work on a daily basis. I'm starting to use it to, my son just turned, or he's going to turn 7 soon. So we're buying him a new bike. So I'm using ChatGPT to help me with all of those things. And now it's become almost like an extension of me. And so I think that really is telling when there's more and more people who are starting to use it for their own personal use cases. That kind of really starts to make it necessary from a business perspective to incorporate it into our marketing strategy and make sure that we're paying attention to it. Because what we want to avoid is, similar to when the transition from the yellow pages to SEO happened. And the online presence, people who said, oh, the internet's here, but it's not going to make that big of a difference. So I'm just going to stick with the yellow pages. They really got left behind. And we want to avoid that. And that's what we are helping our clients with, is understanding what it looks like in the marketplace, what's happening with their competitors, and identifying when that move might happen for their industry. Because it is different industry by industry is what we're seeing. But there's a lot of things that you can do with your existing strategy with SEO. Like the Venn diagram overlap of good SEO to good GEO is pretty substantial. And so if you have a solid SEO foundation, GEO is going to be relatively simple to make nuanced changes to.
So let's tackle that a little further. You've made a pretty big caveat. If they already have SEO that's well in hand, I think my question would be, do you think that represents a lot of people, or are most people really like, I still am confused. Do I have SEO? Is it good? How do I actually start with getting to the table in the first place? How do we start auditing here?
Yeah, I think the first thing is asking yourself the question of, do you understand your ICP really well? And do you understand what questions that they are asking? What pain points do they have? And if you have that information, then I think that information by itself can really serve as more or less kind of rudimentary keyword research in terms of how you want to orient your content. And especially in this world that we're moving to, like what we're finding with our clients is that content used to be really built for conversion. Like that's what we were really measured for, is like how many people can we get to sign up or book a sales call or whatever the case may be. And what we're finding now in GEO in particular, and also more and more in SEO, is that we need to kind of optimize that content now for answering questions very specifically and succinctly. So people don't want fluff in their content. Like I know for me personally, whenever I come to a website, if I read the first paragraph and there's a ton of fluff in it, I'm just bouncing and I'm leaving that page and I'm going somewhere where it gets right to the point. And so, yeah, I think the first question to ask yourself whether or not you're doing like a good job on SEO is, do you have a really solid understanding of your client base? Are you doing client interviews? Are you doing prospect interviews? Are you reinforcing what your assumptions are? Or are you just continuing down that road of like, I think we're doing this right? So like getting that reinforcement from actual clients and prospects is super important. But if you have that, then I would argue that you're probably doing a pretty good job with SEO, even if you don't have like a specific SEO strategy necessarily in place.
So peeps, you got to hear that really loudly. It's imperative that you audit this, ask this, and ask it more than once, because I think what you say is, as a user, my behavior is changing. You know, while we used to be in a place, and that's partly also with, you know, hindsight of different lifestyle of the world of COVID versus the world of now, we're not there to be entertained. We're there for, I need an answer. And that answer has to be very much an overlap, or I haven't got time for the BS factor to be wasted. And so being clear is not a one-time shot. Getting clear is an evergreen effort. And if you do this, this makes this infinitely easier. And
Absolutely.
So now that if we think, okay, I'm going to take a very good leap, but get that right. I'm going to get the basics of an ideal client profile right. I'm going to get really clear who I'm serving, what their pain points are, what result they're looking for. Now, how do I take this and transition this for the AI world? And you're saying that you need both SEO and GEO, correct?
Yeah, I would say you really can't have GEO without SEO first, for the most part. And we've had some prospects and clients come to us and be like, hey, we just want to do GEO. We don't want to do SEO. And I think that's kind of like going to like a home builder and being like, hey, I want you to build my home, but I want you to start with a third floor without laying a foundation. And so when you think of SEO, it's not just content. It's also all the technical stuff that goes on your site. How can that content be used efficiently? How can it be read by the robots, for example, which read content differently than humans read content? So all of those things need to be in order for GEO, for your content to really rank inside of GEO. And there's certainly like a checklist that we can go through just in terms of good practices to really adhere to and satisfy GEO principles and also SEO principles. But yeah, I think when it comes to determining which one to start with, I always recommend people start with SEO, and also not to miss the fact that the vast majority of traffic today is still driven by SEO. It's still done organically. Now, is GEO or AI influencing this over time? Certainly, but we can't just like throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and get rid of SEO altogether, because most traffic is still coming through that source, and so we want to like pay attention to that still.
It's important that you hear that, audience, because I do think there is a lot of chatter. Can I just skip a step? And have I missed my window? The whole reason we bring this topic into Amplify Your Marketing Message is because this is a crescendo you don't want to be left behind from, But being a late adopter doesn't penalize you. Today is still the best day to build a tree, to plant the seed, to start working this and then evolving it and budgeting for the evolution of it. And you say that there are some differences, obviously, in how people search with industries, with different patterns. A lot of our audience is building, I would say, not a traditional bricks and mortar business. There are certainly some elements to that. But how relevant, because SEO used to be thought of as, if I wasn't down the road in plumbing, I didn't need geographic SEO. But do you think as any business, we need SEO, and should be there things we think about from a priority point of view differently?
So I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. And I would say, yeah, I think when it comes to how you think about SEO, I would think of SEO as like kind of mandatory at this point for all businesses, whether it's a local business, brick and mortar, or like most of our clients are in the B2B space and they serve, clients nationwide or worldwide even. And so when it comes to that strategy, like, yes, I would say mandatory to have SEO at this point. And then to, like you were just saying, think of this as laying the foundation. And over time, as you're understanding your ICP better, understanding their pain points better, as your product or your service evolves, that too should obviously influence your marketing and where your evolution comes from for yourself. And eventually moving into, as your market moves into using AI more, you should also move into AI more, and ideally make that move maybe a little bit before them, so that as they're changing their priorities, you're already showing up in those places where they are like shifting their user behavior. So I think I got to the crux of your question, but
You
maybe.
did.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you look at what your services do, so you run a business called Revenue Zen, and you help people with both aspects, right? The SEO and the GEO. When you approach a brand new business who goes, I don't really know what I've got, or I've got something, but I don't know if it's effective, where do you start to build a cohesive strategy so that you can, gain ground today, but lay, as you say, solid foundations for what is coming in a crescendo?
Yes, we do a lot of maybe with traditional SEO agencies will do. So keyword research is still really important, but on top of the keyword research, we'll layer in kind of like GEO keyword research, more or less. And so understanding how people are interfacing with GEO systems and LLMs, because it's a lot different than how they search with Google. On Google, we've been trained over the last 25 years or so to essentially transition to this point where we're using kind of broken keywords in our language with Google to get to the answers that we want, because we understand how Google works and we know how to game that system. With LLMs, people are much more human in their interactions. And so those phrases and queries that they're putting out there are really long-tailed oftentimes. And so the query becomes very complex. And that's why when you're thinking from a content perspective, you need to be able to answer a lot of questions that are direct inside those LLMs, but then also related questions inside that field. And so when they come to us, we will start initially with understanding what those queries are, and there's tools that can help us do that. And even if folks don't work with Revenue Zen, I'd recommend something like a Scrunch AI or a Peak. Those are examples of tools that people can dive into and get some insights in terms of not only how they rank inside of these LLMs and for these queries, but also how their competitors are ranking. Is that something for us that's really important to understand? Is what are your competitors doing? Because ultimately, we all know SEO game, keyword rankings, and showing up on page 1 versus page 2. What goes into that partially is what are your competitors doing? What long tail keywords can you try to go after that your competitors aren't going after right now? And from there, once we have that understanding, then it's finding a way to get the insights from your team into your content. And the reason I say that that way is because specifically what we do is we interview our clients for every piece of content that we're producing for them. And that satisfies the EEAT principles from Google, and making sure that we're really drawing in the expertise from our clients directly. And that makes that piece of content really unique. And it's not going to be replicatable anywhere else on the internet, ideally. That's what we're going for. So we start with those core principles, understanding their website, understanding their business, their ICP, and then going into some of the more traditional audits and technical focus aspects of SEO. And once we have all that in place, then it's content production. And then how do we get more brand mentions? It's not just backlinking anymore. It's, do you have research articles that you have produced, like deep level research that's really unique again in the marketplace? Do you have meaningful ebooks or white papers? Do you have these other assets that can be really thought leadership forward? And that's really what we want to be putting into distribution channels and getting people engaging with, and again, building that universe around our client's brand to really position them as the thought leader, the authority, the trusted resource, because then everything will flow ideally through their bottom of funnel content and ends up leading to people booking calls or asking for a demo.
What I find so fascinating about the world of AI for, I'm going to say, the emerging entrepreneur, so those in the first million, which is, primarily clients I personally serve in our business. What is so fascinating is, we saw a pattern where people would jump into AI because they're like, I don't want to create content. I want AI to create it. And what it did do, of course, was aggregate and middle, and now nobody has an opinion and everything looks the same. Yes. And we know traditional search engines like Google went, I don't want that stuff, polluting our ecosystem, because we really want to serve the answers you seek. And the more detailed questions, the better. And that's always been their hallmark of what they do as a service. But what I heard you say is you've got to now think that, yes, while you might use some AI to be a thinking partner to help you, you actually need to have to put a significantly higher priority on thought leadership content, long form content. And I love what you said, because I think this is very, very interesting. You need to be thinking every piece I create of content will be unique to us only, and will be a category of one in what we produce, or we don't put it out there, because it doesn't help build into the GEO outcome, which is I'm 1 in a million answers and I want to be served as number one.
Exactly.
Most people haven't had that light bulb yet, I don't think. And they're all going, oh, you mean I'm still a content creator? Like, yes. And if you don't want to be a content creator, probably you should hire a revenue Zen, because that doesn't get passed in this new GEO world, does it?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to use AI to augment and build efficiency within that system. But ultimately, in that system, you have to have some level of originality that comes from your brain or someone on your team's brain. Like maybe you have a brilliant product person on your team, like tap them. They could become your most valuable resource from a content perspective, because they'll think about this world from the perspective of your client, because that's their job. They're solving your prospects' problems. And so if you aren't tapping them for that information, like, I think that's a huge missed opportunity. And that's what we do for our clients, is we'll set up those interviews, we'll hold them, and we'll look at a content calendar. And ideally we work about in 3-month chunks with content calendars, and we could interview somebody and cover 20 pieces of content with questions that might take an hour. And then again, we can use AI to take all that transcript and we can inject it. We can even use like a custom GPT, for example, to take that and write the content and then have a human editor review. So there's a lot of things you can do with AI, but the idea of just plugging and playing AI into like this content manager role without any other guardrails, like, to me, that's like kind of like a broken idea. I think it's
ridiculous. Don't do it, peeps. Please don't.
Yeah. And to your point, there's a ton of AI slop out there now, and that's the reason why. And I think it was cool. Everybody's kind of, at the beginning of this year, everybody's kind of testing with AI and messing around with GPT for the first time and seeing what you can do with it. But I think, as we've progressed through the year, what we've seen with our clients is the clients who really understand their brand, who really speak to their prospects and their clients' problems. They really understand who their buyers are. They are the ones who are winning. And even if you look at like big brands out there, the ones that are winning are the ones who know themselves really, really well first. And then secondly, understand how they solve their clients' problems. And they just speak to those things over and over again and build authority and build trust. And then once they have that, they're distributing all of that content in all the places where their clients or their prospects exist, whether it's Reddit or LinkedIn or Facebook or the blog or YouTube Shorts. They're taking that content and they're putting it out in the universe.
So original content isn't going anywhere, and it is going to be critical as you think forward to build in that crescendo, to be able to say we are unique in this marketplace. And guys, to me, I think that's personally super exciting. I love putting the human back into this, and I love that you can say it could be supported by this, and batching content still makes this effective for any emerging business owner, because we know content is essential. And when you have it in, as you said, in that omnipresent way, what it allows for people is I landed on your website. I got an answer that was really topical, really in line. I was in the right room or I was not in the right room. And from there, I start to dive into deeper content. I'm more willing to commit to reading a blog, reading a white paper, watching, being involved in an experience of something. And by the time that somebody does really connect to your unique content, guess what? They're pre-sold. They're like, yes, I'm in the right space. And conversion is high, but it's not high when you're doing generic fluff. So any final thoughts for you in terms of is there anything specifically you would look to say, this is a good job? Because I get the theory, love the concept, totally want the win. How do I know if I'm on track?
I think the real key indicator certainly will just be how many conversions you're getting. And is that growing or decreasing over time? With a lot of our clients and a lot of folks out there, they've probably experienced traffic has gone down as a direct result of AI overviews. And a lot of our clients were looking at that and saying, I'm really scared about this. And our response was, don't be, because the traffic that has declined has been the traffic that was educational. And what I mean by that is their query is educational in nature. It's not transactional necessarily. And so what we want to make sure that we do with our clients is have them appear in those places where those educational questions are being answered, and whether that's AI overviews or inside LLMs directly. We just want to make sure that we're positioning them there so they're again, their brand is being mentioned and noticed. But ultimately, really what the win is going to be is if we can take 100 people who visit your site and have 10 conversions, that's way better than having 1,500 people visit your site, even if you got maybe a couple more conversions. The conversion rate is really optimizing for that and making sure that when someone lands on your page, like you were just saying, whether they consciously say this or it's subconscious, but in their head, it's like, I belong here. I'm in the right spot. This content is written for me. This is exactly what I'm looking for. That's the response that we want to get. And so I think one of the only ways to really understand that is when people do convert, asking the direct question on the sales call, training your sales team to ask, hey, how did you hear about us? What prompt did you use? That's not going to scare anybody away, and it's going to give you a ton of insight in terms of how you're showing up, what that's looking for, and then just, again, tracking within the system. So you're usually using Ahrefs or Screaming Frog, or you're using a tool like Scrunch AI or Peak, tracking that over time and understanding the ebbs and flows of how things are shifting and changing, and then continuing to answer those questions for your prospects.
I think this is an important one, guys. If you're soliciting your customers at all, you're probably, hopefully asking, where did you hear about us? But I love this additional build. Did you use AI? And if so, what prompt did you use to get here? This is a really important one, guys. And I know we don't do it, so I'm going to take that and action that on our side. And I want to ask, as I ask all my clients who come into this space who share their expertise in my network, what are you doing right now to win, to amplify your business's impact, to find your next high-paying client, the person who's going to say, I want it all. I want to get there with you, and I have a commitment to do that. What's working right now for your business?
Yeah, I think the number one for us is because we show up for a lot of AI searches, and we started talking about GEO 2.5 years ago. So one of my co-founders, my business partners, he and I kind of realized, and he really was like, hey, I think AI is going to make a huge jump. And I was like, all right, great. And so we started planning for this a long time ago. But for what we're doing specifically is understanding what we've been talking about, what are the primary pain points that our customers have? And then how do we translate that to what people are going to be asking inside of these LLM tools? Because we want to show up as the first response. And I would say at least half of the sales conversations that I'm having today, they are the most curious about GEO, and they will oftentimes self-select in saying, I found you on ChatGPT, or I found you on Perplexity. And I was just searching for, B2B SEO agency. And I was like, well, the proof is in the pudding, because that's what we're trying to orient our content to. And so specific checklist items in our content, just for the listeners, make sure you have an authorship box in your content. So who's writing the content and why are they, what makes them authoritative about the content? That's good for the reader. It's also good for the robots. And that actually throws the authority signals with those LLMs to position you as a trusted resource. The next thing if you have long content, add a TLDR section at the top of your content. Again, this is good for your readers, but more importantly, you're painting a picture as you layer in the authorship box, the TLDR section. Once you also add in schema markup and like your traditional SEO stuff, now you're painting a full picture for the LLM tool, and it's really telling the tool what your content is about without it having to expend the resources to read your entire piece of content, and that increases your likelihood of showing up. So those are the things that we're really focused on for our own content development right now, and what we're doing for our clients too. And we've seen quite a bit of success when you pair that with, again, like the valuable content, answering questions, being unique. When you pair all these things together, that's really what leads to SEO and GEO success. And that's what we're super focused on right now.
Love to see that. I want to invite you to tell people, how do they find you? How do we get involved in a team that's winning in this area to help us win as well?
Yeah, best place is LinkedIn. Rocky Pedden on LinkedIn, that's my handle. And then our website, just revenuezen.com. And then if you wanted to email me directly, just rocky@revenuezen. I'm happy to we just put together a new GEO audit. I'm happy to do GEO audits for folks at no cost for any of your listeners. So feel free to ping me directly, and I can get that done and shot over.
Guys, you should take advantage of that. That's a golden opportunity from somebody who's winning in this space. Go take it. Go find Rocky Pedden, guys, and say, we heard from him on Amplify Your Marketing Message. We want that audit. I want support. I want to win. Make it happen. Thank you for being our guest today. I've learned a lot, and that is going to be key. Learn, implement, do, guys. That's how we win our next client. We'll see you soon. That's a wrap on another amazing episode of Amplify Your Marketing Message with me, your host, Christine Campbell Rapin. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss another great episode. And be sure to visit christinecampbellrapin.com/podcast to get a free resource on how to master your marketing message. We'll see you all.